Okay? Based on last week's discussion, there is no need for the Torah to tell us not to lie. If you're a liar, the Torah is not for you. If you believe that you can just say whatever you feel like, your words do not have to reflect the truth in any way whatsoever. So you're not yet a human being. You're not a real person yet. The Torah doesn't have to tell you don't lie. So what does the Torah tell us? Midvar sheker tirchak, distance yourself from a falsehood. What does this mean? So I'm not sure which of the sources you saw, which you didn't see. First, there's a whole collection of things the Gemara gives us, cases where people are not telling a blatant lie, and yet it's considered in violation of distancing yourself from something false. Have you seen the cases that go on in court in Bein? You saw any of those cases? You did? Okay, so for example, there's a court case, and it was common for the judges, the dayanim, to bring with them students, obviously to observe, but while they were there, they would also add if there was anything that they would think of that they thought could make a difference. So one of the cases you had there is someone who realized that they made a mistake. He realized that the judges made a mistake, but he doesn't want to correct them yet. He wants to wait till after they write down the decision. Then he's going to go and show them that it was mistaken, so that they will then write into the records that he corrected them. And on the basis of his correction, they are now changing the verdict. Whereas had he just corrected them during the process, his name would never have been mentioned. He wants to get the credit for it. He'd like to find himself in the records. So what does it say? He's keeping quiet. He's refraining from saying anything until after they reach a verdict. That is in violation of distancing yourself from something false. What the Gemara is showing from here is simply keeping quiet is considered being dishonest. There are times that keeping quiet is considered dishonest. So certainly a little white lie, which basically is a lie. You just didn't blurt it out. It's still not true. You're not distancing yourself from a falsehood. How do we define a falsehood? On the other side of it, we saw Beis Hillel. Kate said, Maraktim ifnei akala, where Beis Hillel says, you say, Kala nova chasuda. Beis Shammai disagrees. Midvar sheker tirchak. How does Beis Hillel answer that? So there were different sources. Did you see Rabbeinu Yonah's explanation? Okay, so Rabbeinu Yonah says, and he's not the only one, the Sma goes along with the same thing, that when you're dealing with information to which there are no consequences, that is not considered a falsehood. I mean, face it, they're married. It's not like someone comes to you and asks information about someone. They're married. What's the difference what you say? You're not trying to mislead someone into marrying someone that they don't really want to. Dvarim shel ma b'kach, information with no consequences. That is not a violation of Midvar sheker tirchak, unless it's done with no purpose, no constructive purpose. If you have any constructive purpose, any reason to justify doing it, then that's fine. But if there's no reason, so why change the facts? In this case, you want a husband to think his wife is beautiful, whether she is or not. So there's a constructive purpose. So the rule is, it doesn't make a difference what you're saying. Technically speaking, what you're saying could either be a blatant lie or could be not a lie or nothing in the case of someone who's quiet. But bottom line, what are you communicating? Are you misleading somebody? It's a falsehood, and that's prohibited. You're not misleading anybody? It's fine. This is the basic underlying principle. So now we have to go and put it together piece by piece. I'd like to go back first, revisit the student that was quiet in the courtroom because he wanted the verdict to be issued, and only then, only at that point, he was going to speak up. Every time you see something going on around you, anything that's going on near you, you don't like what's going on, must you always speak up? If you don't speak up, you're considered a liar? When is silence considered a falsehood? There was another case there. A student who was watching a case. This is a court case where there was someone wealthy versus someone poor. And it seemed like the court was favoring the person that was wealthy. It seemed like that's the way it was going. And he had, the way he saw the case, he had a way of showing that it was really the poor person that would win. But he chooses to be silent. He too is guilty of not distancing himself from something false. The Maharal writes, what if it were the other way around? And that is that the court seems to be favoring the poor person, and he has a way of showing that the affluent one really should win the case, but he chooses to be silent there. Says the Maharal, that's not a problem. What's the difference? What's the difference? I mean, everybody asks him, what's the difference? If silence, when you know that they're making a mistake, is tantamount to a blatant lie, then what's the difference? The rich man, the poor man, what's going on here? The answer is silence is not necessarily considered lying unless you've got an agenda. When you're silent with an agenda, that is a falsehood. So take the first case. He's silent even temporarily so that he'll be able to take the credit and it'll be recorded. He's got an agenda. His silence is for the sake of misleading them so that he'll be able to take the credit for it. That's a falsehood. That's dishonest. That's dishonest. Stop them now. What if the student is shy? He has no intent at all of mentioning it even later. He's just shy. He can't see himself speaking in the courtroom. Would we say that he's guilty of not distancing himself from something false? No. He didn't have an agenda. He's just timid. It's being silent with an agenda to bring about something. I've got a whole plan here. That's what's considered not distancing yourself from something false. So similarly, the other case. What's the difference, wealthy, poor? The assumption is that the reason why he didn't want to speak up in the courtroom when he saw a way of moving the case in favor of the poor man was because he didn't want to lose favor in the eyes of the affluent one. That is silence with an agenda. Whereas it were the other way around, the assumption is there was no agenda. He's just silent. So if the reason he is silent is because he does not want this wealthy person to see that he's the one that turned the case against him, because he may need him someday, then that's a falsehood. That's being dishonest. Being silent because you're against something on the deal, that is dishonest. I want to share with you, it was a funny, not so funny, it was a difficult situation at the time, but it's still a funny story. It happened here years ago. One of our fundraisers managed to bring a mission here of some of the world's wealthiest Jews. It was remarkable. The names were it was just unbelievable he brought them here. So there was a meeting where the building was new, the other building, the yeshiva building was new and beautiful. And we met there, and we were trying to have one of these people have our rabbinics program, the smicha program, named for him if he'd pay for it. Great idea. So we presented the whole thing, just what we do. So this philanthropist, he asked, how many rabbis have you ordained over the years? And the fundraiser says, 500. I cringed. I didn't know what hit me. Maybe 120. We did not produce 500 rabbis, certainly not at that point. I don't think we, to date, I don't think we have. So I was in a dilemma then. Do I have to speak up or not? If I speak up in the name of honesty, I'm going to terribly embarrass this fundraiser. On the other hand, to be silent, maybe I'm collaborating. This is dishonest. What am I supposed to do? I decided not to speak up, but for the sole reason of not embarrassing him. And I felt that was not called silence with an agenda. I was not trying to fool anybody. I just didn't want to hurt this person. It was difficult. It was a few seconds that I was tormented. At the end of the meeting, we walked out, and there's a tap on my shoulder. It's this wealthy guy. And he looks at me and he says, what was the real number? Apparently he noticed my body language and realized I was not comfortable with the number 500. So I told him on the spot, I said about 120. But that really is the determining factor is, why are you being silent? Are you trying to mislead somebody? Then that silence is not distancing yourself from something false. You're being silent for some other reason, not to hurt someone. That's okay. That's all right. But this is what has to go through your mind. This is what we need Torah for. Just to tell you not to lie, that's being human. This is what we need Torah for. So it's nice to speak up whenever you see something that's not right, but you don't have to. Unless you're being silent because you want something dishonest to actually come to fruition. Because you're siding with the dishonest one. Silence with an agenda is not distancing yourself from something false. Now we go to the other side. Dvorim shel mabakach. Insignificant information, meaning information with no consequences. There, as long as there's any constructive purpose, it's permissible. Even if what you're saying is a blatant lie. That's not dishonest. You're not misleading anybody. Here we have the Torah again. You don't have to ask a lawyer or look up in the dictionary to see if your words are literally a lie or otherwise. The question is, what are you communicating? What are you bringing about? If what you're bringing about is something dishonest, if you're misleading a person, it's prohibited. You're not misleading anybody. There are no consequences. Doesn't make a difference what you say, except that it is wrong. It is wrong to make a statement that's not accurate unless you have a constructive purpose. So there are lots of such situations. Let's talk about things that are totally insignificant. People ask questions, they want to borrow this, they want to borrow that. You'll gladly lend it to them, but you actually need that. You need the object. You have to give them the whole story of why you need it. You gotta give them the whole story. Or you just simply say, I don't have it. Do you think they're interested? Think they're interested? Someone asks you if you've got change. You have change, but you need it. So you say no. Is that a lie? It's not a lie. Now let's just analyze in reality why that's not a lie. When someone asks you if you have change, they're taking a survey. What are they really asking? Do you have change for me? The answer is no. Now, do you owe them an explanation of why you don't have change for them? I really do, but I need it. Why? Why? So don't bother yourself or don't bother them. Don't burden them with your stories. Just say no. That's fine. That's fine. Are you misleading anybody? You're being dishonest? No. You all right with this? Feel a bit uncomfortable? A little. First of all, that's good. But what the Torah is driving at is to get us to understand the essence of truth and falsehood is all about the message. It's not about the words, it's about the message. Again, a little white lie is a big fat lie. It's just dishonest. If you're misleading somebody, it doesn't make a difference how you go about it. Your choice of words is irrelevant. If you're misleading, if they're giving them information with consequences that are not true, that is lying. On the other hand, if you're not misleading anybody, big deal. I'll give you another situation. I know how creative you are, but you may want to use this someday. You know, there are times that you get together with people and you're going to discuss something that is emotionally loaded, and there are two sides there. And you know, the atmosphere is so thick, and you want to break the ice. How do you break the ice? You get people to laugh. How do you do that? So you may want to tell a funny story of something that happened to you on the way to the meeting. That works, very nice. What if that never really happened? Permissible or not? All right, you want to fight it out? Why do you think it is? That's why you think it's permissible. Why would you think it's not permissible?
Because you just explained that any misleading information is...
What are you misleading? What are the consequences? In what way are you misleading them?
Well, I guess it depends what you really said.
I mean, you made up a funny story, so everyone's going to laugh. What's the big deal? In other words, you're not in any way getting them to buy into something that they don't really want to buy into. You're not getting them to do something. All you're doing is lightening the atmosphere. So you're not really misleading them. The story has no consequences. Yeah?
I remember learning that it's just like the fact that you enjoy falsehood and like you're just doing it because it's for your entertainment.
If it's for your own entertainment, it's not permissible. If it's to break the ice because the atmosphere is not conducive to a constructive conversation, then it's permissible. But if it's just because you like making up stories, that's wrong. You're not distancing yourself from falsehood. Yeah.
Maybe originally it can start as like
You're afraid that that's where it's going to lead.
Yeah.
You don't. Yeah. There is the Nemuke Yosef who says that even when you have all of these justifications for saying things that are inaccurate, if you're doing it on a regular basis, it's not permissible because you're teaching yourself to lie. Yeah, this is a one-off. This is not this cannot be a way of life.
Let's say you're telling like a funny story and there's truth to it, but you're exaggerating. Is that
What's with exaggerating? What's with exaggerating? Exaggerating is totally dependent on the society. If when you exaggerate, people take you seriously, then you're lying. If when you exaggerate, everyone knows that everyone exaggerates, that's fine. It depends on the society, it depends on the setting. There's the source to that. The source to that is the Ran in Adorim. He's talking about businessmen that are negotiating. And this person says, I'm taking a vow. I will never eat bread again if I will sell this for 1 cent more. So the Mishnah says that's not a vow. That's not a vow. The Ran asks, but it's still dishonest, you're lying. Says the Ran, no, that's how businessmen talk. In other words, that's the vocabulary of businessmen. So, for example, Jewish Standard Time. You know, you get an invitation, the wedding is called for 5 p.m. What time is it really going to? If you show up at 5 p.m, you think anyone will be there other than the photographers? So why isn't that a lie? Why isn't that a lie? Why isn't that dishonest? Because everybody knows if you're going to write the real time, people will come an hour late. It depends on the society. Yeah.
And I have another question. Let's say like your friend went out and told her mom that like she's at your house, and then the mom asks you, but like you want to like protect your friend, like is like
Okay. Have you done the second half of maybe you did this already or not? You went into the story of Yaakov and Esav? Not yet. Okay. So there's a whole separate section on what you're doing is actually lying and misleading, and the question then is at times it's justified. That's what you're asking. You're misleading. This is not innocent information. This is loaded information. So there are times it's justified and times not, and it's a whole. I mean, that's something you have to. You'll be studying it. One of the more complicated issues is ages. Ages when it comes to shidduchim. Lying about someone's age. Lying about, is that permissible? Is it not permissible? So you've got an agenda there. How could it be permissible? It depends on the society. Where the assumption is that once you reach a certain age, you will always take off a couple of years. So whatever you tell them, people are going to add on a couple of years. You got to speak the right language. There was a famous story as well. Back in the early days of the yeshiva in Lakewood, Rav Aaron Cutler, when Rav Aaron Cutler was still alive, Rav Aaron Cutler who brought Torah to America. So we had a student who was an older guy. He insisted that whenever anyone asks about him, nobody lies about his age. He said, under no circumstances can you lie about my age. And he was older. So someone brought him to Rav Aaron Cutler. And Rav Aaron told him, if they don't lie about your age, you're lying. Because everyone is going to add 6 years. So if you don't take 6 years off, they're going to think you're older than you really are. And it really depends on the society. In a society where everybody understands that after a certain age, you're okay. That after a certain age, the assumption is that you're taking off a couple of years, that you've got to add them. It's the same as Jewish Standard Time. Exaggerating. Oh, there were 1 million people at the wedding. Does anyone think that you meant to say there were 1 million people there? Our vocabulary is such that when you want to say there were a lot of people, you'll say 1 million people. So that's fine. That's not a lie. By the way, you know when it will be a lie? When you then compare it to another wedding, and you say there were 350 people there, no more. And there you're telling the truth. If you exaggerate one and then compare or contrast it with another one where you're not exaggerating, then you're being dishonest. You have to choose. Are we being poetic or are we being accurate? Yeah.
Why is it okay to start off a relationship lying about your age?
It is not okay, but in a society where the vocabulary is taken that way, where when you say a certain age, it's translated as another one, then you're not really lying because everyone knows what you mean. To really mislead people about age is not permissible. It's not permissible. Yeah.
So you're saying because Lakewood society, let's say, like once you reach a certain age, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you're so old, like it's okay?
Yeah, from 29 and up, the guy remains 29 for 6 years.
Okay.
And everyone knows that. So what are you going to say? You say he's 32, they'll think he's 38. So you really have to know the vocabulary. You really have to know the vocabulary. By the way, going back to a wedding invitation, not every society, not all Jews go by Jewish Standard Time. If you're inviting people that are not part of that culture, you better tell them that the time in the invitation is not accurate or you're lying to them. They will show up at 5 o'clock. You may have to print 2 sets of invitations. It's a different vocabulary. So it's not that lying is justified. But you can't be simplistic and you have to understand your culture. What does the particular word mean in this culture? Trying to think, are there any other good examples of where everybody seems to lie and it's fine because everyone knows it? By the way, we're all talking about lying, not cheating. Not cheating. Cheating like obtaining something that you don't really deserve. There is no justification for that whatsoever. Yeah.
What about when it comes to like your own parents? Like if you're pursuing peace or
So that's going to be a discussion in that next sugya of Yaakov and Esav. There are times it's permissible, there are times that you've got to do it, and there are times that it's prohibited. You saw lying for the sake of peace? You saw that already? Or not? You didn't see that yet? Okay. Yeah.
What about when the Shvatim misled Yaakov?
That's all going to be included in the next one. Yeah. Okay. All right, so what you got to know is you have to know, what am I communicating? If I'm misleading somebody, I'm not distancing myself from a falsehood. If I'm not misleading somebody, then that's not a problem, except that you're still not distancing yourself from a falsehood unless there's a constructive purpose to it. Means misleading a person is not permissible any way you go about it. Any way you go about it. Let me give you another example. You owe someone something, whatever it is. But it's sensitive. They're on the phone. And someone accidentally picked up your phone. That happens, no? Yeah, they're sure that you want to take the call. So someone picks up your phone. I know, a sister picks up a phone. Mother picks up a phone. They're sure you wanted to answer it. But meanwhile, you didn't want to. But you really owe it to them to answer. So what you do is you say, 1 second, I'm going to walk out the door and tell them I'm not home. Permissible or not permissible? Are they lying when they say you're not home?
It's misleading.
What's that?
It's misleading.
Absolutely. They're interested on which side of the door you're standing. To say that you're not home means you're not there. Because you're on the other side of the door, you're not there. You can just as easily get to your phone. So playing this game is not distancing yourself from a falsehood. You are misleading. So you got to get it straight. The literal meaning of your words doesn't go either way. It doesn't make things better, it doesn't make things worse. The question is always, what are you communicating? If what you're communicating is something that is misleading, it is a falsehood, even with silence. If that's your agenda, if that's what you're trying to do. If what you're communicating is innocent, there too, the words are supposed to be accurate, but if you have a reason not to, meaning something constructive, then that's fine. And the reason may even be not to overburden them with your whole story. That's also justified. Okay, so I think we covered the first part of truth and lying. The second part, which is going to be much more complicated, you are going to learn.